Good morning, everyone. If you are joining in on the replay, this is live right now, but if you're joining in on the replay here in a little bit, I will have time stamped in the chat what time the story starts on. That way you don't have to go through everything if you don't want to. If y'all will, please smash that like and share. I am still setting up just a little bit, so give me just a second. I want to make sure y'all can see that good and make sure y'all can hear me good. Hello, Paranormal Nut Podcast. How are you? Hi, Sandra. I know you're ready for this one. If y'all will, please like and share. This one's going to be a doozy. You might want to grab you some coffee. Let's see. Can y'all see that screen good? That's fine. No worries. I do that a lot. I'll just turn on somebody's live and just listen when I can't chat. So I understand that completely. Hi, Dad. Love you. Hi, Laura. Hi, Cody. Hi, Lucy. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this case. I had heard about it, and I'd looked into it some before. But once I started doing like a deep dive into this case, oh, man. You got Tim Hortons coffee. Dad, I need to make you a mod on here. Hang on. Oh, let me catch you on here. Okay, and I think I made Laura a mod last time, so I think we're good there. Let me get this back over here. Okay. But yeah, I when I did a deep dive into this case, it was disgusting. I couldn't believe it. So viewer discretion definitely advised for this one. We get some more people in here, we'll get started. I do have a prayer list I want to go through real quick, and our prayer, and then a couple of shout outs, and then I have an announcement, and then we'll start in on the podcast itself. Hi, Chairman. How are you? How's your back? Yeah, Paranormal Nut Podcast. it it definitely will make you nauseous. That's for sure. Okay, is that fan too loud too? I'm not gonna turn it off, but I just want to make sure it's not too loud. It's too hot if I turn the fan off. So how many of you got notifications? Did y'all get a notification when this went live? You hear no fan? Okay, good deal. Good. I hate, because I don't want to start the deal and then, like have to say hello to a bunch of people as they come in and interrupt the story, because once I start reading it, I don't really want to stop. Okay, good deal. Yes, when live only. Okay, so it didn't show. Well, I know the problem was because I accidentally had it set for 9 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. So I'm sure that's the reason why not a lot of people's getting notified. So, but I'm going to go ahead and go through our prayer list. And if you're watching this back later, I will have the timestamp in the comment section as to where the podcast starts. So please continue to keep us in your prayers. Me and Cody, we definitely need them right now. My oldest daughter, Victoria, my mom and dad, that they get their AC fixed in the van. April's mom and dad, and also Twinkie as she's been traveling up there to her mom's. Steph Layne, Debbie and her family. Melissa and Patrick. Patrick's doing pretty good from his surgery, but he's still in a lot of pain and recovering. So keep him in your prayers. And Melissa, as she takes care of him. Shayna and Danny. Kimberly Adair's brother, but also Kimberly Adair. She's definitely needing lots of prayers. Savannah's grandma. That's my sister-in-law's grandma. Everyday Treasure and his family. Aaliyah and Charmaine. Vodka Vamp, and pray for her mom and the rest of her family. Sarah Hardy, Sandra's dad, Andre, Robin Tammy, and God knows why. We have a young man here named James who was in a motorcycle accident on the 4th, and he's in pretty rough condition, so keep him in your prayers. And also, Bubba is leaving for church camp today, so keep all them in your prayers, the church family and Bubba in your prayers as they go off and enjoy their church camp. So I'm going to go ahead and say the prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, please hear our prayers for the sick members in our community and for all those in need. You know what those needs are. Show your mercy as you close wounds, cure illness, and make broken souls whole again. Thank you for the amazing people in this community who are constantly battling for those around them. Thank you for the people you have put in our path. We thank you for all that you do and all that you are. In your name, amen. I want to give a few shout outs here. These are people that have helped us on our GoFundMe, have also helped us with PayPal donations, and because I know a lot of you don't like using GoFundMe. So we appreciate the PayPal and the CashApp donations as well. And for all the prayers and stuff. The Still One, Twinkie and Slim, George, Wendy, Sean, Joyanne, Vodka Vamp, E.T., Karen Wright, Cheryl with Courage and Buck, and Nephew, Christy, Sherry, Teresa Lemons, Keith Grace, Troy, Debbie McWaters, Shayna's Catopia and Roadkill Review, Mads Entertainment, Player, Batrican and Jesse. And a huge shout out to my mom and dad who have been amazing through all this, and Lainey and Sky and Danny. And also Lala and little Miss Lucy has definitely kept our spirits up. So I have 3 announcements. We have 3 links down in the description below. One is for StreamYards. If you would like to do StreamYards like we do, there is a link down below that you can sign up with, and that definitely helps us out if you sign up through our link. Also, Sticker Mule. It's one of our favorite places to get our stickers done at. They're fairly cheap compared to a lot of the other places that you can go to. And if you go with the link that we have in our description, you get $10 off your first order. And they run deals all the time where you can get like 50 stickers for $9.99 or 10 stickers for 99 cents. You know, they run all kinds of deals all the time. Also, if you are not an Amazon Prime Video subscriber and you would like to be, we have a link down in our description that's going to give you 30 days free, so you can try it out and see if you like it. Um, and we do make something off of that, so if you want to, you can use our link, and you will get to try it for 30 days for free. So, any of those links down below, if you want to use them, you're more than welcome to. You don't have to, but you're definitely going to get some deals by using the link. Okay, I'll give it about another minute or so, and then we'll go ahead and get started. How many people are enjoying these true crime live streams in the morning time? All right, so I'm going to have pictures with this live. Now, this case happened a long time ago, so a lot of these pictures may not be the best quality because, you know, back in the day, cameras were not the best. So the quality of the pictures may not be that great, but I couldn't do anything about it. So, yeah. I don't want to get blamed for the quality of the pictures. They are not the best. Some of them are better than others, but some of them are not so great. But there's not a whole lot I could do about that. All right, so also tonight we are supposed to be on Texas Front Porch at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. As long as my signal holds out, because we will be over at Layne's trying to do this. As long as my signal holds out, we'll be on there. So let's just hope and pray that it works out. And before we get started, I want to stress that this one is very graphic, and it is definitely not suitable for children at all. I mean, I even had a hard time researching this one. So I would suggest watching with headphones or away from your kiddo's ears, because there are some very graphic parts in here, and this couple is absolutely disgusting. All right, so Sandra, I know you're here. So if people are coming in and I'm reading, like if I'm into reading or whatever and I don't see them come in, would you please just let them know that I'm reading, and when I stop reading, I will say hello to them, please. All right, so the case that we are going to talk about today is another case of just torture, heartbreak, murder. It's one that is a little bit more unsettling than most of this kind. And it makes you feel a little bit queasy, definitely a certain type of way. So we're going to be talking today about Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. And we're going to be more on the Karla Homolka side of it, so just bear with me. So this is the couple. So, Karla Homolka is seemingly normal-looking young woman, a normal-looking mom, wife, sister, daughter. By all counts, seemed to have everything going for her. But we often know that perception is reality, and in this case, the perception of Karla was not at all the reality of who Karla truly was. And Karla was an evil mastermind and a very intelligent one. So intelligent that she had an IQ of 132. So this seemingly amazing sister-daughter friend who was she really? She was a convicted serial tapist. And now I'm going to say tapist and tape and all this because you're not allowed to use certain words on here. So if you'll get what I'm talking about. She was a convicted serial tapist and killed at least 3 people in the 90s, including her own younger sister. Since all of this, Karla has changed her name to try to go under the radar, to try not to have any sort of recognition, especially any sort of attachment to her previous crimes. But it's not working because Karla's crimes were so aggressive and so brutal and so horrible that she has pretty much become a household name at this point. But what happened to Karla? What happened to this beautiful young girl, and what made her become the person who committed these heinous acts, especially against her own family member? And we're going to try to figure out if her punishment was enough. And I'm going to let you guys be the judge of that towards the end here. So, because I can tell you my thoughts on it, but I'm not going to say it just yet. But Karla is now walking freely. And you'll see why that is a problem here in just a few. So let's get into this case. So, Karla Homolka was the daughter of Karel and Dorothy Homolka, and she had 2 sisters named Tammy and Lori. Karla was the oldest of the siblings. Karla's father was a Czechoslovakian immigrant who worked as a traveling salesman growing up. Her father was obviously on the road a lot for work, but he also reportedly was an alcoholic. And this caused quite a bit of tension in his marriage to Dorothy and often led to extremely violent eruptions and arguments between the two of them. Starting at a very young age, Karla started showing some signs that we would look at as red flags given any other situation. She loved animals and even worked at a pet store. But at one point, her friend who had a pet hamster said Karla took it and threw it out the window. And of course, this obviously killed the hamster. And although it wasn't torturing this animal, we have seen so many different cases and so many different patterns that when somebody starts harming animals in any capacity at a young age, it's a red flag and usually indicates something more, or something worse to come. Hello, everybody coming in. I see you, Bud Files, David. Good morning. Karla also became obsessed with true crime, but not obsessed in true crime like we are, like me and you. She became so obsessed with true crime that she wanted to intertwine herself in these crimes. So that's what she would do. She reenacted all different sorts of crimes. From different scenarios, she reenacted them. She also enjoyed scaring her friends, and oftentimes she would start interacting with spirits of some sort, really just trying to immerse herself in that kind of world. Throughout high school, Karla was described as doing whatever the heck she wanted. She was unapologetically herself and didn't really seem to care what other people thought. Karla began dating a boy by the name of Doug, and they experimented with drugs and sex and, all the normal stuff that the young kids were doing back in the 90s. But ultimately, that relationship ended. Now, by this point in late high school, she was absolutely obsessed with crime and with all the gory details that go along with it. She had begun having fantasies about death and even one time took her knife and cut herself, which was very alarming concerning behavior. In 1987, when Karla was 17 years old, she took a trip to a convention in Scarborough. And while she was there, she met 23-year-old salesman by the name of Paul Bernardo. And she became infatuated with Paul. They immediately both hit it off, and they ended up having relationships that night. And she was only 17, and he was 23. But in addition to the normal sparks that maybe fly and butterflies you get when you meet somebody new, and you're instantly attracted to them, the part of the sparks that they had grew and went much deeper and much darker because they both had fantasies and the same sick, twisted fantasies and enjoyed to see other people suffer. This definitely seems like a recipe for disaster. Hello, AD. Hi, Shayna. Hi, anyone coming in. Hi, Sean. So let's talk a little bit about Paul. Um, Paul was born in 1964 to parents Kenneth and Marilyn Bernardo. Why are my pictures not in order? Uh-oh. Hang on. Hang on, y'all. Okay. I don't know why that happened, but okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Paul and who this guy really is. Paul was born in 1964 to parents Kenneth and Marilyn Bernardo. He was described as always a very happy and a very well-adjusted child with no real cause for concern. However, when Paul was just 9 years old, Paul's father was charged with being a child predator, and there were even rumors that Paul's younger sister possibly was one of the targets and victims of his father's assault. Now, while this normally would affect any child or family member, deeply and emotionally, people said that Paul didn't seem to be too affected by it, and he didn't seem too fazed whenever he was told about it. When Paul was just 16 years old, he found out that Kenneth was not his real father. Let me get back over here. Sorry, y'all. I got to get to the chat. And this definitely ticked him off. He was so angry, so mad. Um, and he found out that he was the product of an extramarital affair that his mother Marilyn had. And it made him extremely angry, so much that he would often lash out at his mother and call her horrible names. When he went off to college, he tried to meet new women, date women, the normal hookups that guys would have. But his was different. He would hit it off with these girls. He would get them engaged with him. He would, make them start liking him. But his ultimate goal wasn't just to meet women and date women or even sleep with women. His goal was to get them and then humiliate them. He also would beat them, and we all know this is definitely not normal, and it's extremely alarming. And it was definitely a precursor for what was to come because his actions and his behaviors became much more twisted and much more sick as time went on. And I may have some trouble with these pictures, so y'all just gonna have to bear with me. I'll make sure I said hello to everybody, and if y'all will, please smash that like and share this out. So, Karla and Paul met at this convention, and I don't know why my pictures are doing this. I'm so sorry, y'all. I don't really want to have to do it this way, but I guess I'm going to have to. Let me hang on just a sec. I'm going to turn my camera off for just a sec. And try to fix this and see what's wrong with them. Okay. All right. I'm hoping that I got it fixed. What happened here? No, that is not. Okay, I guess I'm just going to have to pull these up as I go. All right, so uh, they met at the convention in October 1987. Earlier that same year, there had been a series of brutal attacks on women in the area, and 3 women were attacked, and 2 of them were assaulted in front of their parents' house. The third woman, however, fought back. Ultimately, she was badly injured and beat up and hurt, but it did scare this person off enough to where he wasn't able to tape her. And again, I'm saying tape instead of the other word. Um, and it was said that, and this is a very disturbing part. So if you are sensitive ears, just close them. But apparently, this person would tape these women in several different ways, uh, and then he would make them perform acts on him, and then he would use whatever he could find around him to tape them with as well. Um, and he would beat them badly in the process. Um, so he was definitely a sick person. Um, you can't even see that picture there. All right, so um, Karla and Paul, with their sick fantasies and twisted fantasies, went on for 2 years. And in December 1989, they became engaged. And Paul and Karla were inseparable. Paul also spent a lot of time with Karla's family, and they all seemed to just love him and enjoy him being around. In 1990, Paul lost his job, and he started smuggling cigarettes. And his previous job was an accountant. He had a really good job, but he lost his job, so he decided to revert to smuggling cigarettes between the U.S. and the Canadian borders. And he did this for quite a few years. And Paul, who was once completely infatuated with Karla and only Karla, started to have his attention going off in other directions towards other women. One woman, or it's not even a woman, one girl in particular, was Karla's younger sister, Tammy. Um, and Karla sees, let me find, this is not working for me, people. I don't know what's happening here. Okay, so Karla sees that he's losing interest in her, and she gets visibly upset. And Karla wants to get him back. She wants to be in his good graces. But one of Paul's biggest arguments and points of contention with Karla, since they had first started dating, was that he didn't like the fact that she was not a virgin. And he told her he wanted to have that type of bond with somebody, and that he could never have that with Karla. And he just kept continuing to pull further and further away from her, and her grasp on Paul was getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So as Paul is expressing interest in Karla's younger sister, Tammy, which is absolutely disgusting, by the way, she was 15 years old, and she should have left this guy, knowing that he wanted her little sister and not her, and she stayed with him. Is absolutely disgusting. She didn't leave him, though. Instead, she had this heavy grasp onto Paul, and she doesn't want to lose him. So she offers her little sister Tammy up to Paul, saying, "You can have her. She's a virgin. That you wish I was. So since I'm not a virgin, I'm going to give you my little sister." And this made Paul extremely happy. And he felt attracted and affection for Karla again, which it makes my skin crawl. So at first, everything started relatively small. Tammy went into Karla went into Tammy's bedroom and broke the blinds so that Paul could have a way to peep inside and watch Tammy. And that satisfied him for a while. That satisfied his desires. But Paul needed to take it a step further because that just wasn't cutting it anymore. So Paul began sneaking into Tammy's room and self-servicing himself in her room, and he would do this while Tammy was asleep in her bed in the next room. And a few months later, this also did not seem to be enough for Paul, and his appetite grew more and more every day. So in July of that year, 1990, that summer, he and Karla cooked up a plan to finally satisfy his desires that he was having, and this is just 7 months after Paul and Karla became engaged. So, being an animal lover, Karla is now working at a vet clinic, and this gave her access to all kinds of medication, particularly Valium. And Valium is a type of medication that can make you extremely relaxed and sometimes lethargic. So Paul and Karla decided that they were going to have dinner on July 24th, and they would invite Tammy to dinner as well. And the plan was to actually lace Tammy's spaghetti sauce with Valium. So as the three of them are having dinner and Tammy is consuming this poison spaghetti sauce, she becomes unconscious. And in that moment, like as soon as she went unconscious, Paul began taping her. However, the movement of the actions and, perhaps the noise, whatever, it was enough to wake Tammy up. And within minutes of this beginning, it stopped. So Karla and Paul called the whole thing off, but over the course of the next few months in that summer, they continued to serve food and drink that were laced to all of their family members and friends. It was like a weird, sick power, and it was a gross bonding experience that they had. They would lace their friends and family's food and drinks when they were around them just to watch them pass out or whatever. They both, this was like a screwed up fantasy that they both shared up until, that point. Karla had only been inquisitive and fantasized about these dark acts. She had never really acted on them, but she had Paul next to her now, and she was accelerating. Everything between them, the bond, the fantasy, the desires, so much so that between the time, and this is him, he was getting worse. She was starting to get worse, but he had already committed several acts of taping and stuff before that. Let me get over here. Yes, okay. So between the time that he met Karla and between then in 1990, when they had started planning out the situation with Tammy, he had already practiced and executed quite a few crimes on women. And these usually were just random women. Paul would start off by stalking these women and then ultimately attacking them for his pleasures and for the thrill and the chase. He definitely enjoyed that. So stalking his prey, then catching them off guard and attacking them, and of course getting his satisfaction, that was what was really driving this. And earlier we talked about those three women that summer that had been attacked and taped. And this person who was committing these attacks was referred to as the Scarborough Tapist. But nobody could figure out who this person was yet. There were warnings being sent out along with the sketch that one of the girls was able to give. And they were telling young girls to be vigilant, be aware, be extra careful, because this person was on the loose. In November 1990, a few months after this first planned incident with Tammy, and after going the entire summer lacing their friends and family's food, police received a couple of tips, and it led them to Paul. And they brought Paul in for questioning. And by this point, they had already submitted over 130 DNA samples to the lab to see if they could get a hit on who this town tapist could be. So Paul was interviewed by them for 35 minutes, and he willingly gave forensic samples. He gave his hair, he gave his blood, he gave his saliva, and he was really cooperating with the police. in their investigation. So when police asked him, why do you think you're being interviewed, Paul? Why do you think we're talking to you? Paul said it's because he closely resembled the sketch of this predator, and ultimately because Paul was being so cooperative, because he willingly gave the samples and wasn't holding anything back. Police ended up coming to the conclusion that this person could possibly not be Paul. That if it were, he never would have willingly gave up the information and answers to all the questions, and he certainly wouldn't have given them his DNA samples. They thought he was too smart, too well dressed, too adjusted, that he couldn't possibly be guilty of doing these heinous things. So in December of 1990, the Homolka family was hosting a Christmas party. And I'm sorry I have to keep doing it this way, guys. I really don't want to do it that way, but I have to. That's not the one I brought up. There it is. Okay. So, 1990, the Homolkas, they have a Christmas party. And this party, Tammy was there. And remember, she was only 15 at this time. But she was celebrating and she was drinking, which is odd for a 15-year-old to be drinking, but, you know, it was a holiday party. Her parents let her have a little. She was in the presence of her family and their watchful eye. But she wasn't just drinking alcoholic beverages. She was drinking alcoholic beverages with sleeping pills in them that Karla put in, and Karla was serving her these because she wanted to serve up Paul the ultimate Christmas gift, and that gift was going to be Tammy's virginity. But at this point, Karla and Paul both knew they needed to be much more careful regarding Tammy and her consciousness, because remember the last time they attempted this, she woke up just after 1 minute of the situation going on. So instead of Valium, Karla had stolen another medication from the vet clinic called halothane. And halothane is a general anesthetic. And I mean, it'll really knock you out. It's what they use for animals and stuff when they put them to sleep to do surgery. So instead of the Valium, she put in this other medication. And when Tammy became unconscious, from her rum and eggnog and the halothane mixture, her parents were upstairs, her other sister was upstairs. They figured this would be the perfect window of opportunity to further subdue Tammy. After they put, they wanted to further subdue Tammy. So they took a cloth and they covered it with the halothane and they put it over her mouth, which actually burnt some of her face. Paul and Karla ended up carrying Tammy down to the basement. Once they were there in the basement, both of them began undressing Tammy while Karla videotaped it. And again, viewer discretion. So Tammy's videotaping him taking advantage of her sister. Tammy didn't wake up like the last attack, though. But during this attack, she started vomiting. And then she choked on her own vomit, which caused her to stop breathing. So Paul and Karla, of course, started freaking out, and they were trying to revive her. They were trying to figure out what was going on, but they were unsuccessful. So they tried to hurry and clean up the scene, and they redressed Tammy. They put her in the bed in the basement. They clean up all the evidence around them, and then they make the call to 911. Once at the hospital, Tammy was pronounced dead, and the reason was due to choking on her own vomit, and the death was labeled an accident. And it was due to the choking based on alcoholic consumption. When word of Tammy's death got out to the family, the officers described the scene as truly haunting. They say that Lori and Karla began to cry softly and just hug each other. But that Paul was crying very, very loudly. Paul had even started screaming and shouting. He had his knees pulled up to his chest, rocking vigorously. just rocking back and forth, shaking his head, screaming, no, 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 throwing his head back, pulling his hair. He just had a very extreme reaction to being notified of the sister's death. When it wasn't even his sister. Her family wasn't even taking it as hard as he was. So another suspicious thing that started happening that night that people should have caught on to was that Karla and Paul started cleaning the house. Middle of the night, they start vacuuming, and they start, of course, in the basement where this happened. So this was where she had died, but they were already cleaning in there. They were vacuuming and everything else. So to me, that would be very suspicious. Let's see. But whenever the coroner did Tammy's body, he noticed that her face was burnt and it had chemical burns on it. But that didn't do anything. They didn't say anything about that. There was chemical burns on her face from the cloth that was soaked in that medication. And they basically fooled everybody. They fooled Tammy's parents. They fooled the medical experts. They fooled law enforcement. And it was ultimately ruled an accident. And they got away with it. They completely got away with it. They got away with it so much that they even left the recorder on the nightstand. Let me show you the recorder. So they left this recorder on the nightstand. Hi, Wendy. So this is the recorder. And they just left it sitting on the nightstand. And on this recorder was them taping Karla's sister being pretty much murdered. And the officer even took a picture of the recorder on the nightstand. But they never took anything in for evidence because they all thought it was an accident. So this boosted Paul and Karla's confidence. Let me see if I can get to the right picture. So this boosted their confidence, and so it made them hungrier for more. And Karla and Paul ultimately ended up moving out of Karla's parents' house and moved into their own bungalow. So this is their bungalow that they moved into. And this is where they had the opportunity and the desires to take things even further. After Tammy had died, Karla and Paul made a video while they were inside one of the rooms at the Homolka house. Let me show you. Here it is. This is a piece of it. It's not the bad part. But in the video, Paul and Karla were laying naked on the floor, and Karla's telling Paul that she loved watching him tape Tammy. And she goes on to say that because Paul enjoys taking their innocence, it makes her happy. And then they start making plans for what they're going to do that summer and how they're going to hunt little girls in honor of Tammy. Then Karla tells Paul, I let you do it because I love you. If you want to do it 50 more times, we'll do it 50 more times because I'm your keeper of virgins. Karla is absolutely sick. She is a disgusting human being. I wouldn't even consider her a human being. But she was going to do anything she could to satisfy Paul and to get him to still love her. But it's not to say that these weren't her own sick and twisted desires as well, because they definitely were. She was trying to appease him. After that video, they go into Tammy's bedroom and they make another video. And in this video, hopefully I have the right one. Okay, they're in Tammy's room, by mind you. In this video, Karla dresses up as her 15-year-old sister, Tammy, wearing a short little blue skirt and a black skimpy blouse. She begins to pretend that she is Tammy and then starts having with Paul, all while Paul is holding a photo of Tammy, and he's envisioning her and not Karla. So that's just completely sick and twisted and deranged. I mean, I can't even imagine. Yeah, she does look evil in that picture. Um, it just makes me extremely nauseous. Not only are they having this sick fantasy and behavior towards Karla's sibling, who is 15 years old, but her sibling, who is now also deceased because of them and because of their own sick pleasure, it's beyond understandable. So shortly after Tammy's funeral in January 1991, Carell and Dorothy, Karla's parents, went out of town. They sent Karla's older sister Lori to stay with her grandparents. Because nobody was at the Homolka home at the time, Paul used this as an opportunity uh, for himself, and he went out and abducted a young girl, brought her back to this family house, where he continued to hurt her. Wrong picture, sorry. These are just not in any kind of order. So this is the Homolka home, and so he went and picked up this random girl, brought her back to the house, where he tortured her and taped her. Um, and all this was being done while Karla was there watching. You know, she was always there. It's not like she can deny any part of this, because she was always there and she was always filming. So, and then after they torture and tape this girl for 3 days, they take her and they drop her off on a dirt road. And of course, this is wintertime. It's ice cold outside, snow on the ground. She has no idea where she's at. And they just go drop her off. And because they didn't refer to this girl as anything except January girl, that's all that she was to them. The girl that they did this to in January. It's absolutely mind-boggling. All right. So they did that in January. So in April, Paul and Karla do this again, and this time to a young girl who was on a rowing team. She was practicing and warming up. Karla began distracting her by waving from the car. Paul quickly attacked this girl and ambushes her, takes her into the bushes, and then commits his acts on her. And when he finished, he told the girl to wait 5 minutes and then she could leave. And she could use he used those 5 minutes to escape. And I can't talk. And of course, Karla was driving the car. So a couple of months later in June 7th specifically, Karla invited a 15-year-old girl that she met while previously working at the pet store over for a girls' night. And this girl is referred to as Jane Doe because her name was never said, and nobody even knows who she really was. So let me find Jane Doe's picture. Where are you? Right here. Okay, I'm so sorry about the photos, guy. They really messed up, and I knew they were going to. I should have done it differently. So she invites her over, and they're going to party. So this girl's 15. They gave her alcohol that was laced, and after this young girl loses consciousness, Karla calls Paul, and she tells him that his wedding gift is ready. This was 3 weeks before Karla and Paul were to be married. So Paul arrives, and they both together begin undressing this girl. And of course, she was a virgin, and Paul began videotaping as Karla did stuff to her. And then Paul took his turn, and he repeatedly taped her. She gets extremely nauseous and starts vomiting. And and she starts waking up. But she doesn't remember what's happened. Instead, she thinks that she's sick because of the alcohol. She had no idea what happened and thought that the girls' night out with her friend Karla was just a girls' night out with her friend Karla. So Paul and Karla took that opportunity to invite her back to their house in August. And Jane Doe went back to Paul and Karla's. However, this time she was intentionally going to spend the night there. And she knew this. So they do what they do. They drug the girl. Paul began his acts on her, and she stopped breathing. So Karla calls 911 to ask for help, but then a few minutes later, realizing what she did, she calls back saying that everything was all right and that they had everything under control. So the emergency crew that was going to come to the house ended up not coming out at all. But luckily for Karla, Jane Doe started breathing again. And still thinking that this had to do with alcohol and not understanding what was really happening to her, these two people came, what was happening to her by these two people. She came back a third time with the couple on June 15th, 1991, just 1 week later, and 2 weeks before their wedding. All right, so a week and a half before their wedding, Paul got a hold of his next perfect girl. Perfect victim, and he got a hold of her while she was out trying to steal license plates. He spotted 14-year-old Leslie. So let me bring Leslie. So he spots Leslie, and she had been at a celebration of life. So she was coming from a funeral, and she got locked out of her house. So she was out just trying to walk around, and Paul was out stealing license plates. And she was alone in the dark, and he asked her if she needed a ride. She said no, could she just have a cigarette? And so Paul used the opportunity of him giving her the cigarette to grab her and snatch her. So Paul blindfolded Leslie, and she insisted that the car door stay open, but he began to threaten her with a knife. After getting her in the car, he drove 14-year-old Leslie to the home he shared with Karla. And when he arrived home, he announces to Karla that he has a 14-year-old girl with him. He tells Karla he brought them a playmate. He begins to do his things, and then Karla comes in and takes her turn. They then got the video camera ready to turn on. They then got the video camera ready and turned on some music. And they liked to listen to David Bowie and Bob Marley while they were performing their acts. And they listened to it loudly so nobody could hear screams or anything else. So they had the music going, the video recorder going, and they began to really hurt this young girl. The video, you can even hear Paul saying, "You're doing a good job, Leslie. You're doing a damn good job." Then he says, "The next few hours are going to determine what I do to you. But right now, you're scoring perfectly." In another part of the video, as they're recording Leslie, she begins to scream out and asks Paul and begs Paul to stop. And they realize that in this part of the video, they are using different objects to tape this young girl with. And she was in an extreme amount of pain. And while this is happening, Karla and Paul kept telling Leslie that if she kept the blindfold on, that they would keep her alive. But at one point in time, she told them that the blindfold was slipping. And the blindfold just completely falls down, and she sees them. So they told her, "We have no choice but to get rid of you." And Paul told Karla, "We have to get rid of her." But, of course, Leslie in the video was begging to be reunited with her family. But unfortunately, she was murdered the very next day, according to Karla. She gave Leslie a teddy bear and sedated her so that she wouldn't be scared or feel any pain. But that seems like a very odd thing to do, you know, especially the previous day you tortured and beat this young girl so badly. But then the next day you're worried about her feeling pain. That makes no sense at all. I don't think that's what happened. So no one knows exactly what happened to Karla, if she, or what happened to Leslie, if she was actually injected with something, or if they did an air bubble in her vein or what. But they did not find her, or they did not find out how she died. Let's just say that. Uh, the very day of Leslie's murder, Karla's parents and sister Lori came to their house for dinner, and they all enjoyed a family dinner without having any idea or any clue that there was a 14-year-old's body in the basement. After that family dinner, Paul was worried that they were going to get caught, so he tells Karla that they need to take apart Leslie's body. So the two of them concoct a plan, and the next day Paul goes to a hardware store to begin getting supplies. Paul picks up a dozen bags of cement. He also picks up his grandfather's saw, and they execute their plan on Leslie, and the two of them take multiple trips to a nearby lake, and they drop over 10 cement casings into the lake, trying to sink Leslie's body parts. But a few weeks later, the father and son were fishing on the lake, and they discovered the cement blocks bobbing in the water, and ultimately found the body. So dinner records were used to identify who this person was, and it came back as 14-year-old Leslie. Her parents were absolutely devastated, and that just wasn't enough to satisfy Paul and Karla at all. I'm going to take just a quick break from this story real quick. They are absolutely disgusting. Like, what type of people are these? It's so disgusting. I'm going to come over here to the chat real quick. Let me put that back up. I promise y'all I had all these pictures set perfectly. So I don't know what happened. Hi, Andre. How many people are still here with us? I know I'm not paying attention to the chat, but this is a long story, and so I'm like halfway, a little under halfway now, so I wanted to take a break real quick. I can't believe how sick some people are. I'm going to turn my camera off for just a second. I'm going to try to fix these pictures because this is really aggravating me. Okay. Thank you all for still being here and sticking around. I appreciate that. Okay, maybe this will work now. I don't know. But I'm telling you, and I'm leaving out a lot of stuff. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff because I know YouTube would like completely ban me from YouTube if I left in a lot of this stuff. So I'm not going to do it. All right, so Paul and Karla finally get married. So they get married, and their sick, twisted fantasies were still there. And they continue on this horrific journey and disgusting path on July 28th. So Paul saw a 21-year-old by the name of Sydney driving home from work. And he begins to stalk her in his gold Nissan. Sorry. So he starts learning her route, Um, and he starts to become really obsessed with her. And he stalks her all the way through uh, August the 9th. So he starts this July 28th, August the 9th. She realizes somebody's following her and taking pictures of her and recording her. And so she goes an opposite direction and ends up at her boyfriend's house. She runs up to him, tells him about this vehicle following her and taking pictures of her. And he comes out and goes to confront Paul. And they write down Paul's license plate. So they call and report it and turn him in. And, of course, it leads them back to Paul. The officers go to Paul's home, and the car is parked in the driveway. But the officers didn't pursue it. And they didn't even submit an official police report because they had a close call, and they had gotten a bit jolted because it scared them. You know, even though the cops did not formally charge them with anything or even talk to them about this, they knew that they had almost got caught. So it scared them. So they decided to take a little break. But just 9 months later, they resumed, and Paul was out looking for new victims, and he found two sisters, Shanna and Carrie, and they were walking home together to their parents' house. Paul began stalking them. These two also noticed him. He was using a video camera. The girls notice him. They try to remember the license plate. Shanna reports it to the police, but ultimately she gives the wrong license plate number. And so they weren't able to find anything until a couple of months later. It was April 16th, and it happened to be the day before Good Friday. There was a lot of students ended up having the weekend off and traveling home from school. They're going home to be with their parents. So Karla and Paul used this weekend as an opportunity to hunt their next victim. And while driving next to the Holy Cross Secondary School, they spotted their next victim, 15-year-old Krista French. Krista always takes the same route home, and it takes her 15 minutes to get home. And she always goes directly home because she has the responsibility of taking care of her dog. Alright, so as they're watching Kristen, Karla hops out of the car with a map and approaches Kristen asking for help with directions. While Kristen was helping Karla with these directions, Paul comes up from behind her, grabs her, and threatened her with a knife. Paul forced Kristen into the front seat, and Karla sat directly behind in the back seat, holding her hair during the time that it took for Paul and Karla to get back to their home. Kristen's parents knew something was wrong, though, because Kristen always came directly home after school, and they immediately called the police. So while Crystal's parents were dealing with the police and making their formal report, Paul and Karla were committing their assault on young Krista, and they did this for 3 days. For 3 days, they videotaped while they physically hurt and taped Kristen. And they also forced Kristen to drink large amounts of alcohol while acting as a servant to Paul. However, she didn't remain submissive to Paul very long. In fact, she became more and more defiant. And at one point, she even told Paul, "You can take my body, but not my will. And some things are worth dying for." Now, this enraged Paul, obviously because he's now losing control. And while normally this outrage would scare anyone, this 15-year-old girl stayed strong, and she stayed firm in what she was saying to Paul. And Paul wanted to scare her, so he wanted to scare her back into being submissive to him. So he decided to show her the video recording of what had happened to Leslie. So he shows her this video, and he starts asking Kristen, "Do you know about Leslie?" And she stays strong, saying, "No, I think I heard about it, but not much." She was very unfazed, and this was just increasingly enraging Paul. And as all of this was going on, Karla went to take a shower, And as she was showering, Paul began to hurt Kristen. And when Paula came out of the shower, she noticed that Kristen was on her knees with her hands tied behind her back with an electrical cord. She also had a cord around her neck. And Paul was talking to Kristen about death. Now, this 15-year-old, of course, had to be absolutely terrified. But remaining calm, she just sat and stared at him with like it didn't faze her. Then Paul jerks and tugs the cord and holds it for 7 minutes to make sure that she's gone. Paul told Karla that the reason he did it this way was because he had been choked before, and that it was a pleasant way to go, because it actually produces euphoric and pleasant feeling after. That's disgusting. So after she dies, they put a blanket over Kristen and they left to go have Easter dinner with Karla's family. I mean, that's absolutely disgusting. You just killed a girl after torturing her for 3 days, and then you go have Easter dinner with your family. But they're using this Easter dinner as their alibi. So they get home around 9:30 that evening, and they began concealing all the evidence. They cut off all of Kristen's hair so that there wouldn't be any carpet fibers within her hair. That would lead them back to Karla's and Paul's house. So also they bathed Krista to get rid of any forensic or DNA evidence, and then they went to go and dump her body. They left Kristen naked in a ditch about 500 yards from where Leslie, the previous victim, had a grave. Paul covered. The previous victim had a grave. Paul covered Kristen with branches, and then they burned her hair, her jewelry, and the blanket that they used to cover her up with, along with any other evidence that was used to commit and conceal this crime. They burned all the rest of it in the fireplace. And on April 30th, a couple of weeks later, a passerby discovers Kristen's body, originally thinking it was a rolled up carpet or a conveyor belt of some sort. Then he realized it was a body and went and notified authorities. And as officers come to the scene, they quickly realized and noticed she had marks all over her body, and it was evident that this was a major crime. And in order to identify her, they used one of her hands because Kristen was a rower, and she had lost the tip of her finger at one point. And this is what helped them identify her. So they dropped her body 500 yards from where their previous victim had been buried. How disgusting is that? Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Sarah. I'm telling y'all, this lady, ooh, both of them are sick and disgusting. I need to rest my voice for a sec. Get a drink. This one's a long one, so. All right. Let's see. All right. So at Paul's name was brought up to police again from these stalking incidents and from these eyewitnesses who had encountered him at some point. The two policemen go to Paul's house to question him, and Paul was extremely gracious, as normal. During the interview, he had admitted that he had answered questions and given DNA before because he appeared to look like the composite sketch because their facial similarities and all that. But overall was a nice, clean-cut, polite man to the police, and they noted that he had driven a Nissan, which the most recent report had said that he drove a Camaro because the two sisters said it was a Camaro. So because of this and because of the way Paul was acting and turning on the charm, they ultimately came to the same conclusion that the officers previously had, that Paul could not be responsible. 3 days later, a task force was created to investigate the deaths of Leslie and Kristen. And as all this was happening, Paul and Karla decided they were going to change their name So they legally changed their name from Bernardo to Thier, which is actually a villain from a 1988 movie called Criminal Law. A villain who also happened to be a serial tapist. So finally, in December of 1992, all these DNA samples that Paul had previously given to the police started to be tested. So they tested them further to see if they could come up with anything. Between all the DNA that was collected from Paul and crimes, only 5 people showed up as having the same blood markers tying back to this crime. Paul's blood was one of those samples. So they needed to send it off for further testing. And this is just completely angering because the amount of people that could have been saved had the police not said, oh, this is a good guy, he couldn't have done it, you know. The whole judge a book by its cover, yeah. But had they actually done true investigative work, they could have probably saved these girls. So, February, a couple of months later, the lab work ends up getting started, and the results from the lab work proved conclusively that Paul was responsible for killing these women. They keep calling them women. They are not women. They are girls. Hi, babe. So Detective Steve Irwin immediately put Paul on 24/7 surveillance. He put him on surveillance. Y'all remember that. That makes no sense. He also learned that recently Paul had been arrested and released on charges of assault. These assault charges stem from an altercation that he had with Karla right after Christmas, just a couple of months earlier on December. So, on December 27, 1992, he severely physically injured Karla using a flashlight on her head, limbs, and face. But Karla didn't disclose this right away. She didn't want to report it or anything. Because, of course, it was Paul that was responsible for it. And she told her work and family that she had just been in a very bad accident. And she ended up just returning back to work like nothing had happened almost a week later. On January 4th, the co-workers didn't believe her. They were very skeptical, and they got a hold of her parents. So her parents come in and they go to Karla's house and they pick her up. And they take her out of the house, thinking that they're rescuing her by physically removing Karla from the home. However, Karla kind of maneuvered her way through her parents and escaped, running back into the house to quickly grab something. She was taken to the hospital, and at the hospital they documented her injuries and took her statements. And at that time, she admitted that she was injured by Paul. And Paul was arrested, but then ultimately released on his own recognizances. So once these DNA samples came back in February, and they learned of this charge again against him from Karla, he could be physically dangerous and could be harming people. The investigation really kicked off into high gear. So now they're getting somewhere. So they go and they decide they're going to interview Karla at her home. So this is the parents pulling her out of her home. So they are going to interview Karla. So they wanted to interview her, but they also mainly wanted to get her fingerprints. And so while they were talking to her about all the stuff, they were trying to get stuff on it that had her fingerprints on it. They also asked her about a Mickey Mouse watch that she was wearing that was very similar to one that Kristen had. And they thought maybe it could be a trophy that Karla kept or a gift from Paul. So over the course of nearly 5 hours, many detectives were interviewing Karla. And through these 5 hours, she ended up admitting to not only the crimes that Paul had committed, but also that it had been recorded and that it was documented. and that he had done some things that resulted in death as well. And she confides in her aunt and uncle that he was the town tapist. She also says that he's the one who was responsible for killing Kristen and Leslie. So with all this new information, uh, the police decide to actually reopen the death of her younger sister Tammy, um, because that death was ruled an accident, and now they believe that it wasn't. So Karla immediately hires a lawyer, and after many conversations and interviews with this lawyer, realizes that Karla may not be as innocent as she was claiming to be, and that she may actually have a role and involvement in these crimes. Yet he didn't know exactly what her role could have been at this point. His goal was just to get her immunity in any of these crimes for her testimony, but he wasn't even really sure that immunity could even be negotiated. Because he still didn't have her complete cooperation and testimony, he had to know what her involvement was. Karla ended up being placed on a 24/7 surveillance as well, and on Valentine's Day, her attorney went to the criminal offices to see if he could negotiate any sort of immunity. He tells them all about all of the videos, the crimes that took place, and they tell him that because her involvement is in these crimes, full immunity is not possible. It is never going to be a probability. So, 3 days later, investigators finally arrest Paul. They go and they search the house for 71 days. 71 days they search this house. But in this search of this house, they only found one video. One. There was 6. They found one. So they do find a bunch of images. They also find an extensive library of books and videos on adult videos, torture, stuff like that. They also find a bunch of books and videos on serial killers. And so while all this is happening, with the house, they're investigating the house, Karla's attorney goes back and discusses a plea deal, not knowing that immunity is complete. Now knowing that community is, oh my Lord, I can't talk. Now knowing that immunity is completely off the table for her in this plea deal, Karla would get 12 years for each of the victims, Leslie and Kristen, bringing the total sentence to 24 years. She would be guilty of 2 counts of manslaughter, but she would be eligible for parole in just little over 3 years. So she would only serve 3 years as long as she had good behavior, and then she would be out on parole. And the government even said that they would call the parole board for Karla because they needed her testimony. So this is the plea deal that they come up with for her. Okay, so they needed her testimony against Paul so badly, so they wanted to make this deal work. Karla's attorney says that he would agree to that as long as Karla could serve her sentence in a psychiatric facility rather than a prison. But Karla still wanted full immunity. She was saying that Paul forced her to do all these things. He was the mastermind, and she was just made to go along with. Uh-huh. Yeah, betcha. I think not. Ugh. Sick woman. And so, because she stated she was under his thumb, but immunity still was not on the table, and it was definitely not an option for Karla. So she ultimately ended up taking the deal, which is like a golden ticket to her. You just killed several people, and you're only going to get 3 years in prison. But her lawyer told her, he said, take it. You need to take this deal. So she was transferred to a psychiatric facility in March, and then she was also put on medication. Now, this is what's so bad. Okay, that's Paul getting arrested. The house. All right. So while at the psychiatric facility, she wrote a letter to her mom and dad. She said, "Dear Mom and Dad and Lori, this is the hardest letter I've ever had to write you, and you'll probably all hate me once you've read it. I've kept this inside myself for so long, and I just can't lie to you anymore. Both Paul and I are responsible for Tammy's death. Paul was in love with her and wanted to have sex with her, and he wanted me to help him. He wanted me to get sleeping pills from work to drug her with, and he threatened me physically and emotionally. He would hurt me when I refused. No words I can say can make you understand what he put me through. So stupidly I agreed to do what he said. But maybe the combination of drugs and the food she ate that night caused her to vomit. I tried hard to save her. I'm so sorry, but no words I can say can bring her back. I would gladly give my life for hers. I don't expect you to ever forgive me, nor will I ever forgive myself. Signed, Karla." Mm-hmm. All right. On May 6th, Paul had his attorney go back to his house and get all the tapes because at this point the search warrant had expired, so he was able to go inside and collect them. Now remember, they had spent 71 days searching that house and only found one. Um, and it's because they were hidden in a lot in the ceiling. There were 6 tapes hidden in total, but Paul instructed his attorney not to watch them, and instead of turning these tapes in, his attorney kept them in secret. On May 17th, Karla took investigators through the house. However, and she collected more evidence, specifically receipts that Paul had used to purchase the concrete at the hardware store. And there was also quite a bit of DNA evidence that was found as Karla was in the psychiatric facility. Before her conviction, she went under all sorts of different testing. And ultimately, a lot of these tests showed that she wasn't the product of a hurt woman, but in fact, she resembled more of a true psychopath. And according to the psychiatrist, she had a typical case of hybristophilia, which is basically a condition that arouses somebody when they see their partner committing any sort of violence. So, Karla stood trial a couple of months later. Let me see if I have the right. Yeah. Karla stood trial a couple of months later, on June 28th, and by then there had already been a publication ban, so nobody knew all the details in the public. Nobody knew all the evidence, and ultimately she went on trial and then was sent off to prison, and the public didn't learn of Karla's true involvement until much, much, much later. So Homolka described herself as a battered wife who was forced to participate in Bernardo's crimes, and that she lived in terror because of him. A search of their house turned up a list of the Scarborough tape books and a defiant sexual nature, a hunting knife, handcuffs, and a videotape of Homolka and Bernardo engaging in sexual activity with 2 unidentified young women. Homolka was clearly a willing participant in both encounters. She admitted to police that one of the girls had been drugged and was later unaware that she had been taped. Well, she knew that was what was happening. She was part of it. On July 6, 1993, as part of a plea deal, prosecutors, as part of a plea deal with the prosecutors, Homolka was convicted after pleading guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter in the Mahaffey and French murders. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison, or to 2 12-year prison terms that could be served concurrently. Authorities weren't aware at the time that the initial police search of the Bernardo resident had missed several videotapes. Tapes that would prove to be the most damning and publicly explosive evidence of the case. So now she's been charged with her two 12-year sentences. She can get parole in 3, guaranteed parole in 3 for her testimony. So on May 6, 1993, Bernardo's lawyer had retrieved the 6 8mm tapes. They had been hidden in the Bernardo home. They were not turned over to police until September 22nd, 1994. The tapes showed in graphic detail the tapes of Tammy Homolka, the torture and tapes of McAfee and French. Homolka appeared as Bernardo's consenting accomplice, not at all a frightened forced participant. By this time, the case was dominating headlines and capturing the attention of people across North America. News of the tapes prompted public outrage. The media accused the prosecution of making a deal with the devil and giving Homolka a 12-year sentence for her role in the crimes. However, the Crown said it was obliged to stand by its agreement. That is absolutely ridiculous. So this is Karla with her lawyer. Okay, so remember that woman. All right. Jury selection for Bernardo's trial began on May 1st, 1995. The Crown opened its case on the 18th of May. The trial lasted 4 months, during which Homolka spent 17 days in court in the witness box. Bernardo was found guilty of all charges against him. 2 counts each of first-degree murder, kidnapping, forcible confinement, and aggravated tape, and 1 count of committing indignity to a human body. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and declared a dangerous offender, making parole highly unlikely. So the families gave their impact statements, and they gave some powerful impact statements. They were angry, and rightfully so, but they were definitely angry. So they gave all their statements, and he was sentenced to life in prison. So 5 years later, in 2000, both the Ontario Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of Canada turned down Bernardo's efforts to appeal his murder convictions. In 2006, Bernardo's lawyer said his client had confessed in 2005 to 10 additional tapes. Since 2013, he has been incarcerated at the Millhaven Maximum Security Prison in Bath, Ontario. Okay. This is the lawyer who hid those tapes. So Bernardo's lawyer, Ken Murray, who initially retrieved the tapes from their hiding place in Bernardo's home, was charged in 1997 with obstruction of justice and conspiracy to obstruct justice for failing to turn the tapes over to police. Murray was acquitted of those charges in 2000. Why was he acquitted? No sense. Makes no sense at all. Because Karla could have got a lot more jail time had he turned them tapes in. They could have not even made a deal with her. In 1996, a government inquiry into the investigation of Bernardo's found that police had made numerous mistakes. Yes, they did. That rivalries amongst police agencies had further harmed the investigation, and that some of Bernardo's crimes might have been prevented if his DNA sample had been processed and matched more quickly. Amen to that. I blame them for not catching him any sooner. Karla Homolka served her full 12-year sentence and was released from prison in 2005 under a series of judge-imposed conditions, including restrictions on her movement and a ban on any contact with anyone under the age of 16. Those conditions were overturned by another judge only a month later, prompting criticism from the McAfee and French families. Homolka settled in Montreal before she gave birth to a son in 2007. But of course, the people didn't want her there. They didn't want her there, so they ran her off. Homolka then lived on the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe under the name Layne Edwards. So there's the people that wouldn't leave her alone. So she lives on the Caribbean islands of Guadalupe with under the name Leanne Bordalius, along with her new husband, Thier. So, you guys recognize this woman? This woman is Karla's lawyer. This is her brother. So, Karla married Sylvia Bordalis's brother, and Sylvia was Karla's lawyer in prison. So, I would have an RBF if I had introduced my brother to a serial killer as well. So she went on to marry her lawyer's brother. That's absolutely disgusting. So Paul Bernardo became eligible for day parole in 2015 and full parole in February 2018 after having served 25 years in prison. However, in October 2018, his application for both day and full parole was denied by a panel of Parole Board of Canada after only 30 days of deliberation. As a dangerous offender, Bernardo will likely never see the light of day. And I pray to God he does not. Now, this picture I included only because it absolutely horrified me whenever I saw it. But these two kill her little sister. They put this picture in the casket with Tammy. So, photograph of Paul and Karla placed in Tammy Lynn Homolka's casket by Paul and Karla. This photograph was taken from Tammy Lynn's coffin by police during her exhumation in the summer of 1993. Karla's parents instructed the police not to return the photograph to the coffin. They killed her, and then they put this picture in with her. I have no words. I have no words. Like, absolutely disgusting. How could, just no words. Absolutely disgusting. So that is the end of that one. And let me tell you, I left so much out of that. Hi, Stephanie. I'm sorry if I missed anybody coming in. Hi, Bonnie. Let's see. Bye, Andre. Have a good day. Hi, Joanne. I left so much out because some of it was just so disgusting. But now this woman is still living in Canada. Yes, she was part of the PTA, but other parents were taking pictures of her and blasting her all over, so she's going to take off again. They found out that she was volunteering with kids the age of the girls that she helped murder. I could not believe that. That was just absolutely disgusting. So when I said this one was going to be a bad one, I meant it, because it was very hard for me even to research. And I'm so sorry about the pictures. I had them all together. I had them set where they would show up behind one another, and then somehow they keep getting mixed up. And the thing is, neither one of them really had, everyone always wants to say, well, they probably had a bad childhood. Neither one of them really had a horrible childhood. Yes, their parents fought. Yes, he found out that his dad wasn't his real dad, you know, but if every child that's parents got divorced or fought or cheated on each other turned into a serial killer, there'd be nobody left on the planet. We'd all done killed each other. Oh, YouTube would have definitely banned this video had I put in everything. And that's why a lot of the words I had to change to make them more YouTube friendly, I guess you'd say. So hopefully everybody understands what those words were, because I didn't really want to say them anyway. But I also didn't want to get banned. But I know Sandra and Debbie, all y'all are Canada, and I know y'all heard about all this before we did, but do you remember any of that stuff, um, Sandra, like as far as like the Scarborough tapist and stuff like that? Do you remember when all that was taking place? Yeah, and if you go back and you research this anymore, you'll understand why I couldn't say a lot of this on here. Um, because there is actually uh, pages and pages and pages of the videotape recordings that they have typed out, and then you can go read. And it is absolute. I only read like 2 pages of it, and then I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I don't. I'm not going to add any of this stuff in, so I don't even want to read it. But they have all the notes from the court deal and everything online. You can find it all. Um, yeah, I don't blame you, Sandra. That's absolutely. You know, I I have even, and I don't mention this a lot, and if you're a member on my channel, you do know this anyway, but I, me and Cody both had a friend that was a serial killer. We worked with her. We were friends with her. I babysat her kids. We knew her husband, you know. We went to their house. Uh, I've worked with a serial killer and was friends with her. And even the stuff that she did was not as horrific as, I know not all serial killers are like, some of them are more subtle than others, but still, all serial killers make me sick. But this one just, there was something about it that just, everything I was reading, it just made my skin crawl. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think Karla, and this is the question I was going to ask at the end of it. Do you think Karla's sentence was fair? Do you think she was actually not as guilty as she tried to say she was? I do not. Oh, I know, Sandra. I would have pulled my kids as soon as I found out. I think she played a bigger part in it than even the police even think. I think she was part of the mastermind. Why would any woman, you have to be a sick, sadistic person to be able to give your own little sister up to your fiance? I'm sorry. That's just, to me, there's nothing grosser than that. And honestly, I would not even allow her to have the children that she has. And to marry her lawyer's brother, that's just crazy. So if you stuck around through this whole story, thank you so much. I know it was a long one, but I didn't want to leave out a lot of details because it would have made you lost, you know. So this one was a long one. I can't believe my voice lasted the whole way through. Barely towards the end, I know. Uh, but yeah, this one, I think out of all the ones I've done so far, this one's the worst one. But next week on, or no, Friday, we have another couple that we're going to be discussing. Don't know if they're just as bad. You'll have to wait and see. But I think they're right up there with it. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I love you. You're absolutely amazing. But I hope y'all are enjoying these. And I don't know if maybe 9 o'clock's a little early. And I know today, um, I accidentally had it set for 9 p.m., so I had to change it to 9 a.m. So I know a lot of people didn't get notified um, of it beforehand, but I did share it out. So I think we just have a lot of people busy today. It is a Monday. But if y'all will, in the comments down below, let me know if 9 o'clock's a good time for y'all. It's probably one of the best times for me because it's quiet and I'm able to be in here by myself and stuff. So just let me know if this is still working out for you guys on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 a.m. And we'll continue to do that. Because I'm really enjoying these morning time conversations. It definitely keeps my mind off of stuff and everything and gives me something to research during the week and kind of gives me a purpose. So I'm actually enjoying them. We are still doing our GoFundMe, still trying to raise up to the goal so we can get Cody's wound care going. If you don't like GoFundMe, you can always use our PayPal or our Cash App. We appreciate anything. Every little bit adds up. Stephanie, yeah. But definitely pray. And if you can't donate, sharing the post about it or sending prayers definitely helps as well. So pray also for everybody in South Texas and Louisiana because I'm pretty sure this hurricane is going to go towards that way too. But it did hit landfall in Houston. As we all know, they flood. They tend to flood a lot. So just pray for everybody in those areas that are in the path of the storm. We're okay up here. We got some storms last night from Oklahoma. So Sarah, thanks for sending those down here. But yeah, just pray for everybody right now. I said the prayer list at the beginning. If you want to go back and listen, keep all those people in your prayers. Praying definitely helps. It definitely does. So Wednesday, I'm not going to announce what we're discussing yet. I'm going to put the thumbnail and stuff up probably later today, and then y'all will know then. So be watching for that, and we will be back on here Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. But until then, we love you guys. You mean the world to us. We hope you know that, and we will see you on the next one. Thank y'all for being here. Bye.